Hey guys,
Hello.
first I'm gonna do the tech check before we get started here.
Make sure
All right, good. We're good.
everything's
Oh,
going.
it's
Is it working?
it's working. Yeah,
Okay.
it's working.
So
Okay,
let's talk.
let's start. All right, I just wanna turn this off. Okay. All right, now I'm back. I'm present. Okay, here we go. So, this topic is coming from someone, me, who has been studying nutrition for over 15 years. So, talk to us. Hey, Matt. So, I'm going to talk to you. Oh my gosh. Okay. I wanted to talk about this topic because I'm seeing a lot of stuff on Facebook about how only those who are vegan will ascend. And I just have a few things to bring to light about that and to consider before we make claims like this. So that's why I wanted to do this Facebook Live. And I brought Max in with me because I was talking with him about it this morning and he was asking me some really good questions. And I was like, oh, well, maybe you should join because you could bring some interesting things to our awareness as well.
Thanks.
So the first thing I want to say is that when you make a statement like only vegans or non-animal eaters will ascend, it is very limiting. You're not accepting of those who aren't vegan. You're creating this very limited way of being. If we learned anything from religious dogma, it's that there is no one way. And so that's where I want to start with this conversation, because it's amazing how the dogma seeps into our way of thinking about things and our awarenesses about things. And I would like to open it up into expansion, that there is not one way to think about something. There is not one way to look at something. And yes, I'm bringing my perspective to you today. And I'm also inviting you to bring your perspective into the conversation. I started a thread earlier on Facebook this morning, and it's hopping over there. There's a lot of action, a lot of comments. This is a very charged topic. And so I just am going to invite you all to take a deep breath. Take a deep breath and set the intention that no matter what anyone says or anyone shares, that you will love yourself, that you will love and accept the opinion and viewpoint of others. So for me, that's ascension, when we bring the acceptance into all of this. And also ascension, again, this is my perspective and my point of view. Right now, we are in that third dimensional matrix reality here on planet Earth. And we do want to bring that fifth dimensional energy and, higher dimensions and all of that into this reality. And so there's a merging that's occurring right now. It's a process, it's a journey. It doesn't happen all at once. That's the timeline we're on, the Ease and Grace timeline, where it's unfolding. So where should we start?
Well, what do you want to discuss with people?
Well, so we'll start with the idea of only vegans and vegetarians being able to ascend. First, I want to ask, where this information is coming from and how this information is assisting our ascension process. First of all, is it true? And if it is true or isn't true, how are these discussions relevant for us right now? How are they assisting us? So my perspective is that as we do increase our vibration, as we do become more aware of life around us, it's important to start thinking about these things like, eating meat, eating animal protein, killing bugs, all of these things. Like I'm at the point where I go into my garden and there's a bug that's destroyed my plant, And there's a part of me that wants to kill the bug so it doesn't destroy more of my plants. And there's a part of me that doesn't want to kill the bug because I want to live in harmony with it. But it's like, if I want to have a garden, I'm not at the consciousness yet where the bugs stay out of my garden and don't destroy my plants. And so it's like this internal struggle for me. Also to consider that if you have someone in your life who is eating animal protein and you're a vegan, not to bring judgment to that person. And this is where I'm seeing, I want to say, a big fail in the spiritual community. For some, not for everyone. Why are you laughing? The terminology I'm using? Because it's judgmental? Yeah. When I see the judgment that's happening for people who are eating animal protein coming from maybe someone who's a vegetarian or a vegan, and they're all about, love and light and ascension, but they're judging someone who's doing something differently from them, that's not the energy of ascension. That's not, so I call it a big fail, and maybe that's my judgment, but I don't mean it that way. I mean to bring this to light, to say, hey, do you realize what you're doing when you are judging someone for eating something differently than you? When we do our retreats, we have a beautiful caterer come in who provides vegan food, gluten-free food, organic food, vegetarian food, animal protein. And she shares with us about the peaceful table where we all come together in harmony, regardless of our food choices. And it's beautiful. And that's, for me, that's heaven on earth. For me, that's ascension. When we all are accepting the way that we're eating. Just a little bit from my personal journey. So I grew up with hunters in the family. They went out and, killed animals and provided food for us. That was just part of how I grew up. And there was never any, talk about killing animals or if it was bad or whatever. That's just was like the way of life, After my awakening and as I changed my diet and my food intake, and I began eating more nutritionally dense foods, my need for animal protein slowly decreased. And so now I'll eat it if my body asks for it, but rarely otherwise. And I think that's one of the biggest messages I want to bring, is to respect and honor your body's needs, because you are still in human form. We are still functioning within a lot of density here on this planet. And the body has needs. The body has requirements. Now, my question to Max earlier was, as we change and we, activate our crystalline DNA and our crystalline organs, do our nutrition needs change? That's what I don't know yet. I've studied nutrition for over 15 years, so I have all these things that I was taught about nutrition. Such as, if you are a vegan and you've been a vegan for over 7 years, do you know that after a while the vitamin B stores in your liver decrease and are depleted? How are you going to get your vitamin B naturally? Not from nutritional yeast that's been artificially inseminated with vitamin D. Do you know how to take care of your body in these ways? A lot of people become vegan and vegetarian and haven't studied it, you don't know how to properly give yourself the nutrients you need. And we all have different constitutions. Some people do fine being vegan for 20 years and they're into they're into sports. They do, weightlifting and bodybuilding and all of these things, and they're just fine. So that's another consideration. You have to know your body and what it requires, and also to know your constitution, and that your constitution is different from anyone else's. So therefore your needs will be different from anyone else's. And if we're judging someone who's eating differently than us, how does that serve?
So how is this all related to ascension?
Yes, thank you for bringing it back around, because there's a lot to say about this. So as we move into crystalline DNA and activating our crystalline organs, do our nutritional needs change?
Yes.
And as we increase our vibration, do our nutritional needs change?
Yes.
So how do you see that happening?
Well, transitioning from a physical body to more of a ethereal body in this crystalline state, this structure where physicality is less of a limitation.
Mm-hmm.
You can translate more of your spiritual energies into physical energies that would sustain your body. And so you could synthesize in a manner the nutrition you need for yourself, which is sort of the idea of breatharians, right? That's sort of that whole. So moving beyond even vegetarianism into having no food at all,
right?
Simply living off the breath. So that's sort of a progressional idea with that, moving from.
But here's the thing, and I'm
right,
totally
and so
on board with
and so,
that.
how does that transition look like? But
we haven't even balanced out this part of the equation before we move on to breatharianism.
And that depends on the individual.
But most people haven't even figured out how to balance what's happening now, let alone how to figure out how to get their prana from light and air.
So again, this goes back to what they're desiring to experience, patterning what they're desiring to experience, living that lifestyle, and how do you actually make that transition? How do you actually bring that adaptation and process to fruition?
So what we were talking about earlier was creating, like, okay, so say you want to be in the fifth dimension, creating that fifth dimensional lifestyle with your eating. And so what you would do is become vegetarian or vegan in, as part of your creation of the fifth dimension. And that's a very valid way to do it for some. And my point is, for some people, that's not going to work because their body isn't ready for that. And I've been working with.
So how do you bring the body to completion with those things? How do you move through the process?
So it comes back to the shadow work.
Right.
It always comes back to that, doesn't it? The shadow work, healing your inner child, working out and finding your wholeness within the density, releasing and transmuting the density from your being. That's what it comes down to, because as long as you're carrying the density with you, you're going to be patterned to those things of density, such as, eating McDonald's hamburgers or something like that. And, it was a big lesson for me in non-judgment with food, because I was probably very judgmental back when I first started out. And when I went to this Ascension group for a year, and there was this one guy who ate Burger King burgers, and that gave him life, and it gave him radiance and juiced him up, and that was his thing. And I was just like, how is that possible? What I know about, how those burgers aren't even mostly meat, and, if they are meat, they're from confined animals who are suffering and all these things. And that's what I'm talking about, getting out of judgment, that we really need to release that judgment, because we don't know. We think we know, but we don't know. So anyway.
So that's an interesting point. You mentioned how animals suffer.
Yeah.
And they do suffer. So how does that play into balancing karma with the process of ascension? How does that play into it as well?
If we eat an animal, what does that do to our karma?
Right, because you're in a way engaging in having the animal suffer, or even the plant suffer. If you look at it from a vegan perspective, you're eating the plant.
Right.
Plant suffers in some manner.
Yeah.
Animal suffers in some manner. So how do you balance those energies in the process of ascension?
Well, I think we have a lot to learn from the native cultures. The Native Americans, the Inuits, the tribes in Africa that are still very primal in their way of doing things, and the blessings that are offered, the gratitude that's offered for the plant or the animal. I think that goes a long way. And then if you are choosing animal protein, to choose animals that were, happy in their life, raised sustainably, raised in harmony, and not, instead of the alternative, the confined animals, the animals that were given GMO food and pesticides and all of that. I think that has that goes a long way in our transition to choose the quality. Right, Linda, I can't see your whole question here.
And what?
Let me see if I can get her question.
Oh.
How can we call ourselves evolved and continue to kill animals? And animals eat plant as well as the meat. You all eat meat comes from plant food. So she's asking, how can we call ourselves evolved if we're killing animals to eat?
Well, I suppose that's a fair question. Are we evolved?
Well, that's part of it. That's what I'm saying is we're not fully at that evolved place.
All right.
Where we can all just, none of us need animal protein. And again, considering everyone's constitution and everyone, everyone's human needs, I don't believe we are at that level of evolution.
So how do we evolve? How do we create those adaptations and bring that to fruition? Right. And so in a way, the premise is to be at the end point. That's sort of the idea behind releasing all these patterns of killing life and eating life to sustain the self. But how do you actually move through that process and not, get caught up in the judgment of everything, of wanting everyone to be there already?
Yeah.
How do you hold compassion for where each person is in their journey? How do you stay in a space of love without putting yourself above others or others below you? How do you move through that process in balance?
Well, it's the same foundational concept that we always get back to. Self-love, honoring yourself, having compassion for yourself so that you can then give it to others. It's kind of like that simple yet very challenging equation, simpler concept, but challenging to execute at times. But that's really it. And again, addressing the shadow, releasing and transmuting the density, as we talked about earlier. When we're able to do that every day, this is not just on a weekend retreat. This is when you're practicing that every day, I think that's how we evolve. And, maybe we're a bit impatient that we, want it now. We want the full evolution, the heaven on earth. We want the shift, all the things that we talk about. But, the truth is we're moving one step at a time. We're going on this journey. And
for each person, it is different. For some people, it will be all at once because they have gone through the process to prepare for it to be all at once.
There you go.
Whereas others, it will be very gradual, and others will have more of a... So it's different for everyone. Everyone's path is different. Everyone's, structure and where they are with their own journey is different.
Yeah. I'm curious if you guys have anything to say about eating plants. So for me, plants have just as much life as animals. Plants have soul. Plants have, they don't open their eyes and look at you. They don't have organs and, things that people always say, well, I won't eat anything that has eyes, that kind of reasoning. But for me, plants very much have life. They have feeling. They respond to emotion. There's books and science on this. This is, not new news. This is from the 70s they did this research. I don't remember the dates. Anyway, plants have life and soul and respond to us as humans. How do you justify eating plants? I'm just curious if anyone has any thoughts on that you'd like to share. So you can put those in the comments if you do. Does anyone have any other questions? For whatever reason, this time the questions aren't showing up. They flash on the screen and then they disappear. Okay. Okay. All right. lots of comments. Let's start. Okay. Here's Linda. I call myself a high vibrational food eater. Okay. Awesome. Okay. That's not a question, but awesome. Thank you, Linda. All right. Is this a question? Plants Plants don't have a central nervous system. Is that what she's saying?
Huh?
What is she saying there? Plants don't. There's a typo, so I'm not quite sure what she's saying. Plants don't have a central nervous system. Okay. Plants don't have a central nervous system. That's true.
So that comes into a conversation of, is there lesser degrees of suffering for plants than there are of animals because of
Yeah.
how they experience physicality, how they experience pain.
Yeah.
Is it different? Is one less dense than the other?
Okay, I'm going to answer that question from Carl. Vegans don't eat any animal protein or any animal products, so no eggs, no cheese. Some vegans don't eat honey because it's a product from an animal or an insect, whatever a bee is. I guess it's
Right. So the premise is because of what you're purchasing supports a certain
industry,
which then induces a certain way of life onto the animal, being, in a cage or in a barn, or having to, live in service to humans in a certain manner. So it's seen as a form of constriction to the animal and to life in a way. And so if you are stepping away from that, then there is less engagement with supporting, people doing that to animals.
So that's
the premise. That's why people choose it, and it's some people look at it at an energetic level of like not setting that karma in motion of having, supported suffering of others. So that's the basic idea.
So to answer a question you asked earlier, to lessen the suffering,
yes.
If you are still choosing animal protein, and if you don't know this information, I'll just share it real quickly. Find animals who were pastured, eating what they're meant to eat. So, for example, chickens aren't vegetarians. They eat grubs and insects. They're going to have more essential fatty acids when they are pastured and roaming in the sunshine, free range in the sunshine. Cows eat grass, and if they are eating a lot of grain, that's not their natural diet. So learn what the natural diet is of the animal that you are consuming, and find animals who were raised with their natural diet in sunlight, being able to free roam, free range in the pasture. Sometimes they're called pastured animals. Look for, grass finished instead of grain finished. So get some of that education if you are still choosing to eat animal protein, and choose the best quality, because those animals will have a higher vibration. They will be raised more sustainably, have a happier life, and have more nutrition, the essential fatty acids, the omega-3s that come from pastured cows, much different than a cow raised in confinement. So just some of those things to look for. Yes, the organic label is good, but if you're getting it from a local farmer who doesn't have the certification, that's okay too. Again, local is great. Learn as much as you can about the process. And if you're eating animal protein and you're just eating it, not, really thinking about what you're doing, ask your body first. Hey, is this what I need right now? Like I said, I only eat it if my body's asking for it. Otherwise, I don't like to cook it. I don't like to kill it. I don't like to do all that stuff. So I'm not going to engage in that process. But ask your body before just eating it. Ask your body if that's what it really needs.
And so that is another step in the process to release anything that no longer serves.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so as you reach different stages with it, you'll need less and less. And that's sort of what a transition looks like. Yeah. And is there anything else that you wanted to discuss about ascension or judgment? Or?
I think the biggest thing is to honor your body, because there are a lot of people out there teaching, if you want to ascend, you have to stop eating meat. And while that may be the natural progression of things, if that's not where you are right now, like I know some people who are eating it for their health. So they become very sick by avoiding it.
So a very common theme I see with what pertains to ascension is harmony.
Yeah.
So what is harmonious with your body? What is harmonious with where you are in your journey? What is harmonious with where you are desiring to go in your journey?
Yeah.
And so harmony is sort of a very, useful guiding tool to reflect on. What is harmonious with where I'm at, what I'm desiring, and where I'm going.
Yeah.
And so having balance with all that, and having compassion for where you are, even though you're not at where you're desiring to be yet. So so patience, compassion, acceptance, and forgiveness.
Forgiveness. Yeah, especially if you're someone who really does benefit and you're getting your health by eating animal protein, and you've been told that, you need to be vegan or whatever. Like I remember a client I had, way back in the day, her soul wanted to be vegan. Like she didn't want to eat the animal protein, but yet her body was very clearly asking for it. And so it created this, battle within her.
And so how do you
harmony?
How do you bridge these things?
Yeah, learning to be human, learning to accept the human needs and honoring the human needs. Like sometimes we want to make these quantum leaps to be, in those higher dimensions. We want to make the quantum leaps to do the right thing. But if it's not honoring the human body, then it creates this, tension and conflict within us, and that just makes everything worse. So the forgiveness piece, I think, that's huge. I accept all that has happened and all that happens. I offer my forgiveness. Thank you. I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I accept all that has happened and all that happens. I offer my forgiveness. Thank you. I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I accept all that has happened and all that happens. I offer my forgiveness. Thank you. I love you.
Mm-hmm.
I think we'll end with that, you guys. Thank you for joining us today. And if you want more interaction with us, come to our retreat in October 19th through the 22nd. It's a Thursday through Sunday. The theme is Unlock Your Power. And so if you want to activate your spiritual gifts, if you'd like to come to Sedona and experience the powerful vortexes here, hey Google. If you want to have more interaction with Max and myself, come join us. We'd love to have you as part of our soul family here. Much love, you guys. Mwah.
Mm-hmm.